down so that the board can understand you better.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Name Keith Fremin, Fremin, DOC number 4777078.
Okay, thank you. Let me explain the process to you. First, Ms. Renata will read information into the record, and then the board will conduct an interview with you. There are participants here today who have indicated they would like to speak. At the appropriate time, we will introduce those guests. Today we have here in support your wife, Barbara Fremin, your brother, Yancey Fremin, and let's see, that's all we have today in support. Both of those would like to make a statement on your behalf. Also here in opposition, Matthew Kaplan, the St. Tammany Assistant District Attorney, will be speaking in opposition, and the victim's uncle, Clayton Bourne, he will not be speaking today. At the end, you'll be allowed to make a brief statement before the board votes. Do you understand the process?
I believe so, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Renata.
Thank you, Ms. Roten. Good morning, Mr. Freeman.
Good morning.
Mr. Freeman, I'm just going to read the identifying information into the record, ask you to verify it, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Marabella as your case has been assigned to him this morning. So you are Keith Freeman, DOC number 477078. You're classified as a first felony offender, currently serving a 25-year sentence for forcible rape, 2 counts, and molestation of a juvenile, 2 counts. You receive 15 years on that sentence, 25 on the forcible rape. They're running concurrently, and you were sentenced in 2006. You don't have a parole eligibility date, nor do you earn good time, but you have a full term date, March 26, 2029. Is that information correct, Mr. Freeman?
Yes, ma'am, as I know it, yes.
Okay, thank you. Would you answer Mr. Marabella's questions?
Yes,
Thank you,
ma'am.
Madam Chairman. Mr. Freeman, my name is Tony Marabella. How are you today, sir?
Fine, sir, and you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Mr. Freeman, how old are you?
I'm 68 years old.
Okay, and how long have you been in prison on these charges?
17 3/4 years.
All right. Tell me a little bit about what things you have accomplished. I have read your report, and I have seen you have tremendous support. You've got letters and letters of people supporting you. So tell me a little bit about what you have learned in prison. What programs have you taken? How have you changed? Tell me what you believe are important things that we should know about you.
Before the programs, I'd like to make the statement that prison allowed me time to reflect, to really look and evaluate myself. That being said, okay, I've taken the sex offender treatment programs, all of them completed, 1 through 5, and also became a facilitator of that program for 1 full year.
Tell me what you learned in those programs. What about those programs have helped you deal with the crimes you've committed and what you've done while you've been in there?
Okay, well, in the BET program, it identifies you without being aware of what you are thinking. It makes you aware now how you observe things that you didn't realize you were looking for or at, and it brought that to the forefront. So now you become more aware of how to restrain from such thoughts. The one thing about the program I really didn't find that I thought should be there was the victim awareness and the effectiveness that was caused by any offender on those victims of sexual abuse.
Tell me what your thoughts are on victim awareness. What do you mean by that? Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, once, like for me, example, I'm in prison. I never saw or heard from the victim 5 years prior to coming to prison. Nor have I heard from them since, nor do I expect to. I don't ever expect to run into them on the street, wouldn't recognize them if I had. However, to be aware without seeing or discussing or having any info from these victims, I can only imagine how I felt, therefore how devastated they had to be because of me. It would be more clarity had I had the ability to, even on a recording, find out how really messed up I was and how messed up they are because of me. And that was missing in this program.
When did you take these sex offender programs?
2008 through 2011.
Okay. Well, that bothers me a little bit, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I read in your application that you filed in 2018 or 2019, I believe, where I was a little taken aback at the way you sort of characterize these young women as, sexually inquisitive and curious, and wanting you to do these things to them. I mean, these were young girls. Tell me what your thought process is when you wrote this document 2 or 3 years ago.
Well, my thought process at that point had already been changed, if you will. But at the time of the events, my thoughts were strictly selfish, self-motivated. They were a pawn that was able to be developed by me. All subconsciously, this was just happening through me. And I was really felt all my life, and I can explain that in great detail if necessary, how inadequate I felt with women my age since adulthood. And it was an opportunity. I wanted to fill a curiosity, which it was unable to be completed, but that's how I took advantage of the situation at that point.
Now you are alleged to have committed this a number of times with these young women, as well as potentially other young women. Yet you say you only did it once. So tell me really what you did. Tell me what offense you committed with these young women.
Okay. As far as the once scenario, the video taken by the detectives, the victim stated it only occurred once, which is true. Secondly, there was a girl and her sister. All right. These events progressed over time, but no physical effects was there or ever even thought of. It was just, I don't know, playful mischief, which developed into something way beyond wherever it should have gotten.
So your position is you only committed one offense?
Only committed one forceful rape offense, not twice. But that's neither here nor there. Once is as many as 5, or as bad as 5, in my opinion, I guess. But I have that on videotape from the victim.
What would you say to the victims today if you had an opportunity to say something to them?
I don't think there's words to say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have happened, I was crazy, or whatever. That's a very, very difficult question to answer. I could only show remorse and express remorse, but I can't cure anything. I've already done the damage. I don't know what I would really say to them that could possibly make them feel at ease or comfortable. So really, I don't know if I can do any help now.
Tell me a little bit about your health. I understand that you've got some medical issues. Tell me about those.
Yes, just recently I've had 4 ambulance trips to the 2 different hospitals. They issued me 6 pints of blood. And I'm on numerous medications. Prior to this hospital recent trip of last week, I was on 32 meds a day, and I do insulin, and all of that's also listed in your booklet. But now I'm on like 11. So apparently I was taking way more than I ever needed to. They have found the cause of me bleeding out. I was on 3 blood thinners. The least of them all they removed from my regimen of meds. The other 2 will stay in place until after open heart surgery or removal of the broken leads in my heart sometime early October. So I'll stay on those 2 blood thinners, which is what caused my problem recently.
Is it fair to say that you're feeling better? Things are getting better medically for you?
At points, yes, sir. And the reason why I say that, my heart's not going to get any better. It's just pumping 30% of the blood. That's a wrap. That's the best I'm ever going to get for the rest of my life. This occurrence was just a bleed out situation due to too many blood thinners. That's been corrected. I still have to have the wires removed. That's very scary. They potentially may have to crack me open, if you will. Bad phrase, I understand. Just to sew up whatever holes they may pull out of my heart, pulling these wires. And then they insert a whole new high-tech device in me. And prayerfully, I'll live the rest of my life with just that one device. But I've had many since I've been here at RCC devices.
Now, you mentioned you've taken a number of programs. You talked about the sex offender program. What other programs have you taken that have really changed who you are?
I've always believed in God, but I never practiced that. Coming to prison, like I said earlier, it allowed me to reflect on who I am and why I did whatever in the world I did do, and how I felt about myself and what I thought I needed to change within myself. And through that, Church of the Kings, as well as, and that's in local, church level, as well as the church here, United Fellowship, going through many of their programs on Christian studies. And there's numerous years, and because I was in the faith-based dorm as a mentor for 5 years with Mr. B.J. Gravel, who was supposed to speak today. And I was in that program for 7 years. I learned so much about what God is to me, and therefore who I should be to everyone. And that has really opened my eyes. And I'm highly appreciative of being that involved in that curriculum. Other things, yeah, I did anger management just because it was available. I did AANA because it was available. I wanted to take all the programs I could.
Did you have any sort of alcohol or drug problem?
No, sir.
Have you ever had any sort of alcohol or drug problem?
Well, a long time ago, way before any of this situation, I did fail a urine test once. Yes. And that was the only.
While you were in prison or where?
Oh, no, sir. No, this is like 40 years ago, 45 years ago.
Tell me about the molestation charge that you pled guilty to prior to these charges.
Right. That would be my wife's daughter's daughter. That came out of the blue for me as well. I got carried away with the concept of this playful little person, and it was me again. To reflect back now, looking at it, I generated these issues. No one brought it and tried to make things happen. It was me manipulating things. And yes, it was my wife's granddaughter. And I just took advantage of the situation.
What were the actions? What did you do?
I
What
exposed
specifically did you do?
Right. I exposed myself on more than one occasion, and but I never had any physical contact with that person whatsoever, nor did I want to. But
Now, you actually had picked the jury and was in trial when you decided to plead guilty. Is that right?
Yes, sir. And the reason for that is, as Ralph Whalen, my attorney, and myself were there, we would pick and discuss on a jury. We would select the person, and the DA and or the judge would say, nope.
I understand how all that works. You
Right,
were in
okay.
the process of going to trial, and
Right.
you chose to plead guilty and accept a 25-year sentence as opposed to potentially life, right?
Right. Now, the reason I did that was my attorney said that if which I volunteered castration, total castration. He said if I did that I would only serve half my sentence. He told that to myself, my wife, my brother, my sister, all together in a group. But apparently he never told that to the courts. So I was stuck with a 25-year sentence, and he never came back until we had a post-conviction where he restated that. He thought it was the right thing to do for me to go home and half my sentence. And yes, that's why he told me this. So yeah, I took 25, thinking I'm only going to do 12 and a half. And that never turned out that way at all.
Tell me about the castration. Whose idea was that? And what
Mine.
has it done for you?
Wow, that was an awakening as well. It cost me $10,000, and it was very difficult to do while incarcerated. I was in prison. I was in a parish jail, not in prison at the time. To get it done, it was from my wife's doctor's friend kind of thing. We had to get it done underhanded where it wasn't publicized or anything such as that, and put the hospital at risk for doing it because it was elective, not necessary by it being a cancerous situation. So I had that done. And the reason I had done that was my age and my wife's age. She's 10 years older than I am. I figured it was time to give all this up. And it wasn't about giving up sex. It was about never having the desire to have sex. even with my wife. We discussed this in great detail. I needed to get that behind me. I didn't want to be again in my life with my mind wandering on doing something that I wasn't controlling. I wanted to be able to control it and know that I could never reoccur any type of charge like this ever again. And I also wanted my victim to be aware I did this, so they, in that little bitty moment in time, can feel like, well, I did the best I can do to fix this for everybody else, if there was ever anybody else.
But the primary reason you did it is to cut your sentence, right?
No, I'm not going to say primary, no, sir. It was an equal split. I mean, but yes, that was a very integral part of it, only because my attorney said that that would be that way. Which again, like I said, that didn't happen anyway. And I'm not sorry I did this. I'm on meds for life because of it. And I'm not regretting that I did it, whether I'm still here or not, for that reason.
Tell me a little bit about your disciplinary record while you've been in prison.
Yes, sir. I've had 5 write-ups at this facility, none anywhere else. And these write-ups, the last one was on year 2013. No, it was on 9/13, on the 9th month, and it was suspended. It was a Rule 4. And I don't think that's high court. I'm not into the legal parts of
What happened? What was the factual basis?
Disciplinary, from what I understand, but I have no clue, sir. That's years ago, and I really don't remember. I got a write-up for going to eat before I went to lab, not realizing I had lab, and that might be what that was, but I don't really honestly say for sure.
Warden, can you tell us anything about Mr. Fremin?
I'm just going through his record and looking at it. He has taken numerous programs. His last write-up was in 2013. It was a number 4 of disobedience, a Rule 4. He is he's helped out in the education department here. He's helped them a good bit in there as far as being a tutor. He does have numerous medical issues that he has been sent out here and on numerous medications. It appears that has leveled off some here recently. Other than that, as far as being in here, he's not really been a problem while being incarcerated here, especially over the last several years.
Thank you very much. Madam Chairman, that's all the questions I have at this point. I'll sit back and listen to my colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. Marabella. I do not see any other questions on the board at this time, so I'd like to have staff to introduce those who will be speaking.
Okay, yes, ma'am. First, we're going to hear from Ms. Barbara Freeman, the wife. Ms. Freeman, you have 2 or 3 minutes to make your statement. Go ahead.
And I'm Keith's wife. My name is Barbara Freeman, and I am 78, and I'm a retired occupational therapist. I've known Keith for 26 years. We got married, and we're still married today. And I have been a witness to the changes that he has made and the growth that he's made during the prison years that he has been incarcerated. He says it differently than I say it, I guess, but having time to think in prison, he realized how guilty and ashamed he felt for his past behaviors. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. He realized that things he needed to change his thinking, change his behavior, and he decided that he wanted to be a better person, and he wanted to be right with God. He learned to take full responsibility for his actions, what he had done in the past. I'm sorry, Mr. Gravel calling. He can't get into the meeting. PJ, I'm speaking right now. Okay. He can't get in, sign into the meeting. He's tried, but
He's been contacted by our staff, ma'am. We need to just conclude your statement, please.
I'm
Thank you.
sorry. Okay. Well, Keith studying the Bible helped him to identify things that he needed to be changed about him. And he worked on those things. He repented of those things like one by one. It was took years of progress. He has a good appreciation of the hurt and the harm that he did. He has he feels remorse about it. He's deeply sorry. He's learned to take responsibility for all of his actions and to be honest with himself. And Keith has done just numerous programs. I wish I had time to mention them all to you, but I know I can't.
Okay, Ms. Freeman, we need you to wrap up, please. There's other speakers.
Okay. Keith has serious medical problems. He's like his stay in prison has been extremely difficult because of his medical problems. And he has a home to live in if he's released. And he's disabled, but we can get his Social Security.
Freeman, Ms. Freeman, we need you to close. We have other speakers. You've been well over 3 minutes, please, ma'am.
Sorry, Dawn. Okay, well, that's all.
Okay, next we're going to hear from Yancey Freeman, the brother.
Hi, my name is Yancey Freeman, Keith's brother. We also have an older sister, Debbie Kessler. When I was thinking about what to say, it came to mind that prison is a place where we send people as a punishment for a crime they've committed, with the ultimate intention to reform them so they can be returned to society. Now, I don't know percentages, but I'm willing to bet that the percentage of those that get reformed is pretty small. Keith is in that small percentage. Over the last 17 years of his incarceration, he's taken classes to better himself. Then he became a tutor, a certified tutor, and taught others and mentored those around him. Fellow inmates look up to Keith and respect him. But now it is time for Keith to come home. Keith is in failing health, and prison isn't the place for someone in need of extended health care. When Keith is released, he will have support from his wife, Barbara, his anchor. In addition, he will have support from his family. I look forward to family crawfish boils, weekends at the camp, barbecues, and all the things we do together as a family. I hope that this bond hearing can see that Keith has been reformed, that he needs medical care that the prison simply cannot provide. And I hope that you allow Keith to come home and spend what time he does have left with his family. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Next, we'll hear from Matthew Kaplan, Assistant District Attorney from St. Tammany.
Good morning. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for allowing me to participate. I'm not on video. I'm homesick today. I'm not feeling well, and I'm not terribly presentable. I wrote a letter to the board. I want to make sure you received it. And this is, I heard Mr. Freeman's wife talk about how ashamed and remorseful he is, but I didn't hear any of that from Mr. Freeman. I heard him talk about how prison gave him an opportunity to think about the things that he'd done, which that rubs me the wrong way. He didn't have time to think about that until he was caught and sent to prison. I mean, he knew you can't have sexual relations with a 12 or 10-year-old and know that it's not wrong. And you don't volunteer for castration unless you know there's a real serious problem. And he was looking at a life sentence, and apparently didn't think his chances at trial were very good because this was the court record reflects that this was not like an offer from the DA made to the defendant. It was an offer from the defendant to the DA. And it was for 25 years, and 25 years, 25 years is supposed to mean 25 years, not 25 years unless I'm in poor health. 25 years is supposed to mean 25 years. And I think the victim was trying, that some peace of mind for the victim is that 25 years means 25 years. And he brought his post-conviction claims to court saying, oh, well, 25 years was really only supposed to mean 12 and a half years. And, the court didn't buy it. And I submit that the board shouldn't buy it either. And yes, he's been doing good in prison. He's had no access to children in prison. And if he, and as far as I noticed, one of the things about his written application was he was talking about the cost of the medical care to him in prison. Well, he's elderly, and if he's not in prison, he's going to be out, and the public is still going to be picking up his medical expenses under Medicare. So, I mean, the public is on the hook for his medical expenses. The question is that money going to be paid with him in a place where he absolutely has no access to children, or is he going to be out where there is a possibility that he has access to children? I mean, I guess I don't know if I've run out of my time, but for reasons I've already expressed, the DA submits that he should not be released a day earlier than necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. We appreciate the input by the DA's office. I think that's everybody who's indicated they'd like to speak this morning. So we'd like to hear from Mr. Fremin. Is there a statement you'd like to make before we reach a decision?
Yes, ma'am. I do totally regret, and the gentleman who just spoke is correct. I was fully aware of what I had done as I was doing it, and I was just tied up in selfishness and a loss of pride. And it was ignorance on my part, and it was not just in any means, manner. And I'm greatly, greatly regretful to not only the victim and what they must be still going through as I am, but my family, their family, and everybody associated with any parts of us. I truly regret where I am today and now. I tried to correct that as much as I could. And it's not about dollars and cents for medical care. It's about getting the right medical care. My wife is an RN and can maintain my visual daily requirements of taking care of me and sending me where I need to be sent if need. I've done all I can to enhance my education. I've been a tutor for 14 years at this facility, and now I certified, as my brother says, with a college degree, all in the cause of helping others. My life here has been to support and encourage others. My life is as it was. I can't change the past. I only have the present and future to deal with. And I'm doing all I can. And I ask for this second chance to be able to do that outside. That's all.
Thank you, sir. I think that the board is prepared to vote. Mr. Marabella will be voting first.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Freeman, I want to commend you on the work that you've done while you've been in prison. You've taken a lot of classes. You have a lot of people who are supportive of you, which means you're on the right track. And I do want to say that I commend you for that. I'm very concerned, Mr. Freeman, about your crime. I'm very concerned about your past record. I'm very concerned about the fact that you say, you understand the victims, you understand what you did, yet it's everybody's fault. These young girls apparently, asked for it. I was quite offended when I read your statement, to be perfectly frank. Now, you've explained it, and I'm not sure exactly why you wrote that, because it was 20 years after the fact or 10 years after the fact, but you wrote the way you wrote it. It's your lawyer's fault. You expected something else to occur. You got castrated primarily so you could cut your sentence. I'm not convinced you get it, but I am convinced that you're working hard towards that. Your medical condition is resolved in somewhat. I do feel for all of those things about you, but I think you're on the right track. But Mr. Freeman, when I add all of those things up, I simply can't vote today to grant you any relief. So my vote today would be to deny relief. Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Marabella. Ms. Jackson?
Right. Good morning, Mr. Freeman. The crime itself was really bad. I mean, one of the girls was 11 years old, and you've done irreparable harm to them. I don't know that you fully understand the magnitude of the harm that you've caused them. But like Mr. Marabella said, I was more offended by what you said about the crime. I mean, I understand that all these crimes are bad. If they weren't bad, the offender wouldn't be seeking a commutation. But you essentially blamed them for your actions. And how this girl got on her hands and knees and wanted you to do it to her. I mean, I can't even imagine why that would come out of your mouth, particularly if you've gone through sex offender treatment, all phases. And I don't understand how you could be a mentor when you yourself have not been honest about what you did. I've heard your family say you've taken responsibility, but I haven't heard that. I've heard you refer to it as curiosity and playfulness, and it offends me that your wife, who is so supportive of you, you molested her granddaughter. Where does it stop? You make excuses for everything, and although you've gone through these programs, and I commend you for having done them, I just don't think they've sunk in with you. I don't think you've really received the benefit of these programs, because if you had, you couldn't possibly blame these little girls for what you did to them. And so I don't think you're reformed, and quite frankly, I don't think you're on the right track. Because if you had gone through all these classes and you can still have the mindset that this was just playfulness and it was their fault, then I don't see that you're on the path to restoration. And so today, Mr. Freeman, I absolutely have to vote to deny your request for commutation.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Mr. Roche?
Good morning, Mr. Freeman. How are you?
Good, sir. And you?
Mr. Freeman, I have to be brutally honest. After reading the information and hearing your presentation during this interview, I can no way make a recommendation to our governor to commute your sentence. The victim is adamantly opposed. You have law enforcement opposition. The DA's office submitted a letter and presented a presentation today and is adamantly opposed to any clemency. You have a long history of sex offenses. You've been arrested for obscenity, sex offense, child fondling, molestation of a juvenile, sexual battery. You've had multiple victims over a 20-year period. And after hearing your presentation today, I think you risk the public safety. For all those reasons, I'm denying your request.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. Mr. Wise.
At this time, I'm going to be denying your request on the reason you have very, very strong law enforcement victims opposition. Also, some of your past crimes that you had back in 1975 with the obscenity stuff. This has been something that just kind of followed you along the way. Today, my vote is to deny. Thank you.
And Mr. Freeman, I do concur with my colleagues. I made some notes as you were speaking, and whatever I did do kept coming out of your mouth. It's like Ms. Jackson says, it's not apparent that you've accepted full responsibility for your actions, even though your wife has said you have. It didn't come across today. We didn't see it. You also score as a medium risk for antisocial thinking. And the opposition that's been expressed, that's been mentioned here today. My vote today also is to deny your application. So today, sir, your application for clemency has been denied. I think that concludes our business. No, we have one more case at RCC. I'm sorry.
It's unbelievable. This is how every single Roach case should end. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. Miss Jackson with the mic drop. Did you hear that? It was the mic drop heard around the world. You said that she got on her hands and knees and wanted you to do it. This is what he wrote just 10 years ago, 10 years, 12 years after he's been locked up. It offends me that your wife is supporting you. It was her granddaughters. I know you probably wouldn't have realized that by the way he was talking about it, but it's her granddaughters, biological granddaughters that he was doing this to. And she stays married to him. She stays supporting him. She stays and gets up and talks on his behalf. Thank you, Miss Jackson, for calling that out, because she should be sitting in prison beside him. They deserve each other. You know that the victims moved to a different country? That means her daughter or son were so disgusted that their mother is such a cockroach that she would stick by that man instead of her own grandkids, her own children. They had to get up and leave the country. And she'll be wondering why she dies alone. His brother, you enabling fool. You want to go home so that you can barbecue crawfish. We'll go over some of the details of what his surgery was like. What's particularly frustrating and interesting about this case is that it seems that this judge got it. It seems that this DA got it. Or he was just too foolish to know how easy on these cockroaches Louisiana is. You know, he's probably kicking himself every day when he talks to his fellow chomo who's had more victims, who's gotten their own biological grandchildren pregnant, and who are only serving 7 years. Repeat offenders with 10-year sentences. And he's like, oh my God, I got castrated and 25 years. I mean, he was facing a life sentence, but we see in Louisiana, they don't give you long sentences for these crimes. They don't, especially that many years ago. They don't care. So, you know, maybe his attorney was really, but it is true. The attorney, and I'll read that appeal what he made. And it seems the attorney did fully believe that he would get just 12 and a half years. I mean, he stated on the record that that's what he told his client. Castration will get you not 25, but 12 and a half. And the judge said, no way, Roche, you are getting 25 years, you cockroach. He was on probation for doing this to someone else when he did this to his step grandkids, his wife's biological grandkids, 2 of them. And it's interesting. We're going to go over some stuff and some data, which frankly, Louisiana parole board and their system needs to read, because when we read this, you'll say, oh my gosh, it's apparently they don't understand data. And what I mean by that is they go through here the whole idea of castration. It wasn't chemical. It was an actual surgery. And they bring up data and references and other countries that do it and the risk of not doing it. And it's quite fascinating. It also discusses the case. And if we have time after, we will do another hearing. How about that? So stick around. So, voluntary surgical castration of sex offenders, waiving the 8th Amendment, protection from cruel and unusual punishment. I mean, this is just incredible. In July 2005, Keith Raymond Fremin was about to go on trial in Covington, Louisiana for 4 counts of aggravated rapes involving an 11-year-old girl and her 13-year-old sister. Fremin, a neighborhood resident, first gained the girls' trust before victimizing them. Fremin started playing basketball with the young girls, eventually invited them to his home and abused them. One of the victims told a classmate about the abuse and later reported the incident to her teacher. Police arrested Fremin on January 27, 2004. Like most offenders, this was not Freeman's first offense. Like most offenders, it was not his first offense. When police charged him with the 1995 rapes of these sisters. What? The same victims? I'm so confused. Fremin was already on probation for molesting another young girl in 2003. You can't make it up. Why is he out? But he is. And then what do you think he did? What a shocker. He was facing life imprisonment if a jury convicted him of his latest offense, but I highly doubt they would have given him that. Prior to the start of trial, Freeman decided to plead guilty on 2 counts and 2 counts of, and he also volunteered to be surgically castrated. I love it. I really do. I mean, just the beautiful aspect that he had to pay 10 grand to castrate himself. And then he didn't get the 12 and a half years he thought he would get is beautiful karma. Is that how you would put it? The victims, then 17 and 19 years old, young women, agreed to the plea bargain. They said, okay, we're cool with you chopping it off. That sounds good. The Louisiana State Court Judge Donald Fendelson accepted the plea bargain and agreed to reduce Freeman's sentence from 40 years to 25 years. You see that? There, he was only going to get 40 without parole or probation. And remember, this was a commutation hearing. This wasn't a parole hearing. So he was pleading for them to recommend to the governor to give him a chance at early parole, to commute his 25-year sentence to 12 years or whatever. And that's why there are more parole board members, more than 3, because this was a commutation hearing. So if Freeman did not undergo the procedure, then the judge said, yo, if you don't you got to do this now. And their judge retained the authority to revoke the reduced sentence and give him 40 years. Due to the unique nature of the offense, it had been difficult for government agencies and courts to effectively punish offenders' activity. Research has shown that offenders do not change their behaviors in response to. Now, here's where it gets, in my mind, fascinating and quite obvious. I'm sure most of us know this, but again, Louisiana does not know this. Because if they did, you might think that they would stop rating prisoners as low risk. Every single cockroach offender almost every single is low risk, which is absurd because the data says clearly that they are incredibly high risk. So they need to justify, right? This whole report is saying, can we even agree to allowing castration? Because doesn't it violate his rights to avoid cruel and unusual punishment? So they go through this study, which I'll put in the description. And thank you, Richard, for finding this. This is my kind of candy. And I know it might bore some of you, and I totally get that. And you can skip ahead to the next hearing if you're not watching this live. Research has shown that offenders and behavior in response to traditional deterrents, so they don't respond well to traditional deterrents, such as reproach from society and other shame-inducing alternatives. So cockroaches are not a homogeneous group, and motivations to commit offenses vary. This makes categorizing cockroach offenders difficult. Studies have shown that incarcerated cockroaches continue to victimize young children once they are released on parole. Wow. Who would have thought? The United States Department of Justice reported that cockroaches are 4 times more likely than non-cockroaches to be rearrested for another crime after they're discharged from prison. This is data from the United States Justice Department 4 times. So stop categorizing them as low risk. You guys are nuts. Heads need to roll, and the system needs to change. And for those of you who get it, you get it. For those of you who are new to this channel, 99% of every single cockroach that comes up for parole is listed as a low risk of re-offending. And the parole board members state it as such. They say, you are low risk. That's great. High recidivism rates suggest that incarceration alone is ineffective and does not deter such offenses. As a result, state legislature has turned to innovative and unusual approaches to punish these cockroaches. Castration of cockroaches is among the methods states are using to fill the gap left by more traditional punishments, such as here's slap on a wrist, here's probation, here's house arrest, here, put this detector on your leg so we make sure you. The case of Keith Fremin adds a new dimension to the ongoing debate about using castration to punish roaches, since Fremin volunteered for surgical castration in exchange for a reduced sentence. So they're saying this is a new angle. He's volunteering in exchange for less time. First, surgical castration raises the issue of whether a punishment violates the Eighth Amendment. And it goes on to say, so they're going to go, so now it just lists, it says what part 1 is, part 2, part 3, part 4. So they bring up some history, and history is my favorite. I am obsessed with certain, history. I think history, I love World War II. History is my most passionate. I'm a World War II enthusiast, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And then from there, it drops down to other interests. But so, okay, here's where they talk about what it is. Surgical castration, also known as, I think that's or is it orectomy or chiotomy? I don't know. Is an irreversible procedure that involves the removal of the testes, which produce the male hormones. It does not involve amputation of the penis. That's too bad. The procedure itself is simple, and it involves a small incision in the scrotum to remove the testes. The procedure's primary effect is to diminish the sex offender's physical and emotional ability to respond to sexual stimuli. Surgical castration has been used successfully by other countries to treat offenders. Research from these countries indicate that the removal of the testes is an effective method of reducing recidivism rates. A 1979 European study of these roaches, this is 1979 they started doing this in Europe, found that recidivism, say it 3 times fast, of cat was 2.3%. You hear that? If you were you at a 2.3% compared to 39%. And remember that's 39%. Then still another study indicates that only 3% of surgically castrated offenders committed a subsequent sex offense. So listen to that. Of the 2.3%, only 3% of that 2.3% did something to hurt another human being in sexual nature. While members of the non-castrated control group had a 46% recidivism rate. You hear that? When they let out an offender in this study, 46%. But don't worry, they're a low risk score. These studies provide strong evidence that surgical castration is an effective method of deterring sex offenders. Proponents of the procedure argue that surgical castration is minimally invasive because it's not a major surgery and it's often performed on outpatient basis. Further, the primary advantage of surgical castration to other forms of punishment is in its performance. That's an interesting use of words. In fact, there is no risk that offenders will manipulate the procedure as they could with drug therapy. It produces long. Exactly. I hear the drug therapy, it can be manipulated. And it's, I think, more ongoing, more expensive. I don't know why they don't just do this. Probably because that's where the money's at, do it chemically. Others argue that it's a fitting punishment. And an ardent supporter of surgical castration is a district court, Texas district court. And they go into how the Texas district court did it for someone who had abused a 13-year-old girl and a 7-year-old. And they go through the whole list of it. And here they go through where Texas actually legislation was passed allowing it by Governor George W. Bush at the time. And you know, the legislation forbids anyone to do it without the consent, and you have to get a mental evaluation, be deemed, you know, that you're competent, and it's up to the inmate. And it goes into saying how other states are allowing it, and it basically goes through the whole thing. They did all of this to determine whether he could actually take the deal. This is the so he petitioned. Remember, he was talking about petitioning. So he petitioned the Supreme Court to have the right to file an appeal on his sentence. And he won. They actually granted. My understanding of this is that he won. Conclusion: the petitioner writ should be granted, but then it was granted. He was able to place his case, and it was denied. But here they ask his attorney. They say, "Do you recall Mr. Fremin initially pled guilty upon the sentence?" No, not specifically. This is his attorney now answering the question. I just don't recall. Do you recall Mr. Fremin talked about good time and you advised that it would be in 12 and a half years? Yes, I do. Well, did Mr. Fremin tell you that he would take the deal if it had to do a 12 and a half years on good time? The good time calculation was very important to the discussion. It was key to his decision and recommendation of the plea. There was extensive discussion about it. I told him that was my opinion. We looked at the law together. My feeling was that if he entered the plea because he believed he would be in 12 and a half years, because I told him that was my opinion. So, you know, he did actually think he was going to he didn't just make it up. And it made the news. Louisiana man was surgically castrated. It's strange. In this article, it says that they lived near him. And what we just saw, they clearly said that it was her grandchildren. I'm quite confused by that. But I believe what I hear here over what we read in the press, but also it was in the legal document. So I am quite confused, unless they weren't married yet and they got married after. Is that possible? That can't be. The things that he said, I don't know if you were taking, the things that he said were so, you know, he had all this time to think about it and he's still so clueless. You know, it's almost like I wanted to give him credit at first for getting cash when I heard about it. And like Richard, it's like, you know what? He cut it off. Like maybe he's someone who actually identifies that he's a cockroach, that he has a problem, that he can never trust himself, and that he would cut it off. And when I saw it, I said, you know what? Let me give him credit. But he didn't do it for those reasons, and he didn't. And I don't know if I should give him credit for not trying to. You know, he could have just said he did, but you know what? Why he couldn't? And now I think there's a cookie trail in the legal justice system. He literally filed the reason for he filed that what we just went through because he said he was doing it to get out 12 and a half years early. So, but that's why he wasn't able to play those cards. But he was completely unable. Like something's clearly very wrong with him, and he's not even manipulative enough, which is good to get out. Yet he's somehow manipulative enough to keep that woman married to him, which is just the strangest thing. Again, that's why she should be in prison next to him. The reason is if I did it, it would okay. Then he says, and when he stated that he had touched them out of a curiosity, and he like almost said it with like regret, that I was unable to be complete. It was playful mischief that developed into something more. It's like, wow. And also, let's give the district attorney, I don't know if maybe I forgot, but let's give him a huge hug. He showed up under the weather, sick. He still showed up, and he showed up to which we just don't see happening. So let's call it out when we see it and give him a salute. I'll put the links in the description for this hearing. I just thought this one was fascinating. Now let's go. We're going to do another commutation hearing. But it's not a roach hearing. So give you a little bit of a break there. But Richard said I should do it, so I'll take his word for it.
To speak at the appointed time. Today we have in support Norris Henderson from the First 72. He'll speak in support. And then we have two in opposition from the victim's side, Avril Walker, a cousin, and Faye Ifrud, an aunt from the victim's side that will be speaking in opposition. At the end, you'll be allowed to make a brief statement before the board votes. Do you understand the process?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Ms. Renata.
Thank you, Ms. Roten. Good afternoon, Mr. Matthews.
Good afternoon, Ms. Renata. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm thankful for this opportunity.
All right. Well, good. So as she said, I'm just going to read some identifying information, ask you to confirm it. And then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Wise because your case has been assigned to him this afternoon. So you are Juan Matthews. Your DOC number is 225702. You're classified as a first felony offender.
Yes, ma'am.
You're currently serving a life without parole sentence for second-degree murder. You were sentenced out of Orleans Parish in 1992. Is that information correct?
Correct, Mrs. Renata.
Okay. Would you answer Mr. Wise's questions, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Mr. Juan.
Good afternoon, Mr. Wise. How are you, sir?
Yes, sir. Doing good. What is your job capacity now? Where are you working at now?
I'm a mentor within the BMP program, what is called the Behavior Modification Program at Camp C.
Right. Have you been involved in the automotive business?
Yes, sir. Automotive business or automotive vocational training?
Yes. Yeah, mentor auto.
I was a student.
I just realized I forgot. Some of you might be wondering, I don't cut people off, as you know, what he is, if he's still locked up, what his situation is. And coverage we just watched. And the short answer is we're not entirely sure. It says here that he's deceased. But why we say not entirely sure is that there's no obituary. And I just kind of thought that his brother and wife would definitely need one, but maybe they didn't know to put it online. So, but it does say that he might be deceased. And anyways, it's been a long time since we've seen a roach hearing that seems to go the way it should. And this is why I'm in such a good mood. But okay, let's jump back into this.
student at the
Okay,
vocational training.
yes, sir. Back in 15, you had a little hiccup there. You had a 522 and a 30 W there at 15. What was going on about then?
515.
You had some disciplinary, right? Yeah. A 123.15, you had a rule number 5.
Right.
8:15.15, a rule 22, and 10:14.15, a 30 W. What's the deal there?
The last write-up I had was an assumption of a fight that was supposed to occur on a yard. Me and the guy had a discussion, and we walked outside to discuss it, and they assumed that that's what it was the end result. So somebody wrote a letter saying that they thought that we went and had a fight.
All right, well, you had 3 different write-ups during that time. I know that's been a while back, but I'm just seeing them. Did you get moved, or you moved around, or what was the deal for it? Because you hadn't had a write-up in a while.
Right. Since then?
No, not since then. During that same time, there was 3 different write-ups. There's 3 disciplinary write-ups in 15, which is not a big deal, but I was just saying, did you get moved, or what was the reason? Because you had a number 56, 57, and 58. Rule 5 was on 123.15,
right.
8:15 and 15 with Rule 22. That's what I'm talking about.
No, sir.
What was the reason for that?
Rule number 5 was that's an aggravated disobedience. Huh? Aggravated disobedience.
Yeah.
I have asthma, and I didn't go to a particular job site because it was outside. At the time, I had an indoor duty status, and the person wrote me up for that.
Okay. Well, you look at your programs you take.
Excuse me, sir.
Go ahead. There must be a delay in these.
Yes, sir.
On this. Go ahead and complete.
I'm finished. I wanted to hear what you had to say. I didn't hear what you said.
Okay, I see you. Your school equivalency diploma in '94. You've done some good programs since you've been incarcerated. Where are you working at this time at the prison?
Camp C, as a mentor with the behavior management program.
Okay, how long you been working there?
Since it's been started, I was one of the first ones to help initiate it in 2019.
All right. How long have you been incarcerated on this state?
30 years.
30 years. You've had 56, 57, 58 disciplinary, which are disciplinary. How long have you been a Class A trustee?
Four years. 5 years. 5 years as a Class A trustee.
Warden, is there anything there that you had to say on his behalf?
He is, again, like he's saying, he has been working back at MC since November of 19 in his behavioral management program, helping out with these guys going into the program and working with them. He has not been a problem for us. He's been a good inmate for us.
Okay. Mr. Matthews,
yes, sir.
If you had to say anything right now to the victims of this case, what would you say pertaining to the board? Tell the board.
Well, first, I would like to say, if I would not had stayed in the neighborhood and gotten to that conversation with Mark Copeland, that's the determining factor to this situation. That's the biggest part that's got me into this biggest problem.
Was drugs involved?
No, sir.
Alcohol?
No, sir.
What was the reason?
Well, there was a altercation that happened the day before, and Mark's friend was killed, and he came to me for some money, and I gave him $5 to get out of the neighborhood to put some gas in a particular car. The following day, when I saw him in the neighborhood, we talked, and one word led to another, and he ended up telling me that because his friend got killed, that he was going to start robbing everybody in the neighborhood. And so I said, well, me? You going to do that to me? So he said, no, I wasn't talking about you. And then he gave me the $5, and I left out the neighborhood, and I hadn't seen him since.
All right. Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. I see Ms. Jackson has questions. Ms. Jackson?
Yes, Ms. Matthews, how are you this afternoon?
How you doing, Ms. Jackson?
I really do want to talk to you about the incident, because I'm not getting any sense from you what actually happened. As I was reading the letters that were written on your behalf, a couple of people indicated that you had taken responsibility for your actions, but I don't see anywhere that you've actually done that in your commutation investigation. You deny guilt. You're not being open right now about what happened in this case. And so it causes me to question why you're not accepting responsibility, why you're not acknowledging what actually happened in this case.
Well, according to 15572.4 subsection D of the
I don't need to hear about that, Mr. Matthews. I'm familiar with the provisions regarding this hearing, but I'm a person who has to make a decision as to whether or not I think you are a risk to society. And one of the things that I look at is whether or not that person has truly been rehabilitated.
Yes, ma'am.
And part of that process for me is to see whether or not a person is being honest and forthcoming and has accepted responsibility for their actions. And so I don't want you to read to me any statutory provisions. What I want to know from you is what happened. Why are you serving a life sentence for taking someone's life? Obviously, there was a trial. Obviously, there were witnesses called. There was evidence presented that was sufficient in the minds of a jury to find you guilty. And so I am simply asking you to give us an honest response when asked about the circumstances of this offense. And I would like to give you the opportunity to do that right now.
And so I was in another part of the neighborhood when this situation occurred. And since then, I have information that proves such. That's the best I can give you, ma'am.
Okay. Well, if that's all you got, that's all you got.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, let's talk about your release plan. If you were to be granted relief, tell me what your plan is.
First,
employment.
I'm supposed to be getting employment with former Warden Borough Kane over in Mississippi as a chaplain in that institution. In the event that I'm given the opportunity to be released out of this prison.
Has he written a letter to the board substantiating that?
He was supposed to.
But he did not.
I don't know.
I'm telling you, he did not.
Oh, okay.
And what about a residence plan?
At the first 72, I'll be allowed to move there.
What is the first 72, Mr.
That's a halfway
Matthews?
house, ma'am.
Well, a halfway house at best is temporary.
Mhm.
So long-term, what do you have in place?
Well, if I was to get the job working as a chaplain, I would have the money to purchase and pay for residence.
What if you don't?
Well, I would look for more stable job. And I can,
Doing what?
well, I'm a cook. I'm a certified cook, and I do auto mechanics.
Okay. Now, I saw, I'm trying to find your, you wrote your own synopsis, if you will. And, you know, I saw all these plans for all these nonprofits and all these things that you were going to do.
Yeah.
However, those things require money. You know, you can't just go out and start a nonprofit because that takes money. So what's your plan for that?
Well, my plan for how you start a nonprofit, you can generate funding through various different crowdfunding ideas.
Again, Miss
As an initial.
Okay. Well, Mr. Matthews, that's tenuous at best.
Mm-hmm.
And that's tenuous. You know, you mentioned upon leaving prison, you will have 100 pecan candies and candied apples of various flavors, thus giving him the financial stability needed to hit the ground running, to establish his initial 2-year projection of successful entrepreneurship. So what is that all about?
Well, I was going to be able to get, when I was in the main prison before I moved to Camp C, I was going to be able to get a donation from one of the inmate clubs, possibly to get the 100 candied apples to make for this when I'm released.
But Mr., I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I mean, it doesn't seem realistic to me to think you can convert 100 candy apples into a sustainable source of income. It doesn't seem realistic to me. Why does that seem realistic to you?
Because I believe in thinking big and starting small.
Okay.
You got to start small to grow.
All right. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I'm willing to use the trades that I have to make the currency that I need to.
And which trades in particular do you think will help you with that transition?
I'm a real excellent cook. I'm an excellent cook.
Okay. All right.
Of all of them.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And that's all I have.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Jackson. You used to work at the Big House Cafe, didn't you?
Yes, ma'am.
I thought so.
Yeah, I talked to you. I spoke to you.
Yeah. So yes, I can attest that he is an excellent cook. I want to tell you that you had a pretty impressive packet. We had, I think it was over almost 400 pages that you sent to us. Numerous letters of support from offenders and the faith-based community inside and outside of prison. That was impressive. Now you've submitted 3 previous pardon board applications.
Yes.
This is your first hearing, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You've been in jail almost 30 years. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
30 years?
30 years.
Okay. Is there any other, I think we've already heard from the warden, Falgu. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, ma'am, I don't have anything else to add at this time.
Okay, thank you. So I'd ask Ms. Leah if you would introduce our speaker, please.
Yes, ma'am. So we'll hear from Norris Henderson
For
in
speakers.
support from the first 72.
Good afternoon. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good. Yes, I know Juan. I've been knowing Juan the whole while he's been inside, and kind of like watch his maturation the whole while he was there. And I'm the first 72 actually will provide housing, transitional housing for him. He had shared with me earlier about Warden Kane's wanting to bring him over to Mississippi to be one of the inmate chaplains over there to represent the Islamic community, along with Sidney and Ron Olivier and a few other guys who actually went to NOBTS. The transition, we're willing to house him to see if that comes to fruition. And in the event that falls true, willing to help him get jump started inside the city of New Orleans, if that's what he chooses to do. So I'm here just kind of like want to, attest to that. I know him for being in the Islamic community with him, praying with him, and realizing that, people have, he's grown a lot. To the extent of what transpired that caused him to be there, I can't vouch one way or the other, what happened, what didn't happen. But I can attest to the fact that the individual that you see today is somebody that I'm willing to help transition, to help transition back out. And one of the things that it needs to start with actually having stable housing. And that's why we actually created the first 72 plus to do just that. We have expanded our operation where we have 3 houses now as opposed to just one. And in the event that the board make a recommendation that we know this is a process that may not happen until a year, 2 years from now, hopefully before the governor's leave, if you get a recommendation. But we're willing to kind of like work with Juan in the event that he walks away with a favorable recommendation today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Norris. Next, we'll hear from the opposition side, Ms. Avril Walker, cousin to the victim.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Just make your statement.
My name is Avril Walker, a cousin of Mark Copeland, and I am opposing to this pardon. Juan has not fully stated what what he did, and he needs to tell he needs to come clean with himself. He needs to come clean with the story that what happened. It was March 31st, 1992. He knows what happened. He know what he did. We had a 6-year-old witness at the time that told what happened. He came from behind a van. Now, can you please tell me, Juan, why did that happen?
Well, he's not allowed to respond to you, Ms. Walker.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay. Is anything else you'd like us to know?
That his mother died grieving. His sister, she's had a nervous breakdown. She's not good. His aunt, she's sick right now, but she's trying to be on the phone, but I don't think she's able to get on for some reason. They had some kind of technical difficulties.
She's here, Miss Avril, she's here.
Okay, all right. Good. Okay, that's all I had.
Thank you, Ms. Walker.
I'm just opposing it.
So next we'll hear from the aunt of the victim, Ms. Faye. If Rod, you just need to dial *6 to unmute your phone. Miss Ifrod, can you hear me? Just dial *6 and your phone will unmute and you can speak.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, my name is Faye Iford, and I'm Mark's auntie, and I recall that day like it was yesterday. I came home from school. I'm a school teacher, and like I said, one thing about it, Mark was a nice person, and he didn't have to be shot down like a dog. And my prayer is that Juan Matthews die in jail. He can die in jail without a funeral. My sister grieved her, was her only son. My sister grieved herself to death. My brother grieved himself to death. We came from a small family, and we all are hurt. I just recovered from cancer, and I would never want to see him free. And he killed my nephew 18 times, and he can't explain a reason why. He was found guilty without any thing of parole. Like I said, that's the way I feel. He should never walk the street. He's a monster. You shot a person 18 times, and you think you got the right to walk? So that's what I got to say.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate your input. Is that all our speakers, Ms. Roten?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Matthews, is there a statement you'd like to make to wrap it up for us?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to finally state what I had to say. I've never been given an opportunity before, and I'm appreciative to be given this opportunity. If you all grant me the pardon, I'm hoping that whatever in your discretion, I'm leave that up to you all.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think we'll be ready. We're ready to vote. We'll start with Mr. Wise.
At this time, I look at the programs. He's done some great programs since he's been incarcerated. He's done some good things. You are 50 years old now, is that correct?
51, sir. I just made 51 August 3rd.
Okay, you just made 51. You've been incarcerated 30 years, right?
Yes, sir.
And I look at all the positive things that you've done since you've been incarcerated, your conduct record and positive. Today, I'm going to be voting to commute your sentence to parole eligible after 35 years.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Mr. Roche?
Mr. Matthews?
Yes, sir.
I didn't ask you any questions. I sat back and I listened, and you didn't have much to offer. Panel members repeatedly asked you exactly what happened, and you refused to answer any of the questions. If what the victim's family say, the victim was shot 18 times, you have to know exactly why you fired a gun 18 times. So I really didn't get enough information to make an informative decision. I'm going to have to rely upon the warden's comments made by Mr. Henderson, and rely upon the judgment of my colleagues, and I'm going to vote to commute your sentence to 99 years with parole eligibility after 35. And that decision comes from relying upon the experience and the knowledge of my colleague, Mr. Wise. But you did not offer any information for anyone to make an informed decision today. If this comes through, you need to get your act straight, because you're going to have trouble at your parole hearing. Do we understand each other?
Yes, sir.
Madam Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Roche. Ms. Jackson.
Mr. Matthews, this is really troubling to me. And unfortunately, we are missing some records surrounding the incident. But it really bothers me that you refuse to take responsibility for your actions. And it really offends me that when you, on one of the documents that you submitted, you make a claim that the trial judge and the victim's mother were friends and affiliated due to her raising campaign funds at the merry-go-round hall. Also that the clerk of court, the mother of Naira Hood, the victim's girlfriend. I mean, you make some horrible accusations against people's integrity, and yet you refuse to accept any responsibility whatsoever for your actions. There was a trial. There were witnesses called. There had to be some evidence to support a finding of guilt in your case. And yet you refuse to accept any responsibility. And I can't get past that. I'm sorry, because that shows me that there is a lack of remorse. There is a lack of acceptance of responsibility and no true rehabilitation. And I question your release plan. It seems like a pipe dream to me that you have all these grandiose ideas, but nothing real or concrete once you're released. And for those reasons, Mr. Matthews, my vote today is to deny your request for commutation.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. So, Mr. Matthews, as you know, there's only 4 pardon board members present today, so it would require a unanimous vote for a favorable decision in your case.
Yes, ma'am.
And so you know what the outcome is.
Yes, ma'am.
I would, based on your prison record, vote to commute your sentence to 99 years with immediate parole eligibility. I look at the remarks from the security who say you're a model inmate. You devote your time to teaching your fellow offenders to be better citizens, and the work that I know you've done within the prison setting. But today you've received 1 unfavorable, 3 unfavorable votes. So the outcome today is that your application's been denied. Keep up the good work. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Miss Jackson with the mic drop again. It's surprising to see Mr. Roche grant so often. It was interesting. Jim Wise, he's pretty. I'm just frankly quite happy he's not here. I don't know if it's something to do with the Wise name, but he starts with the interview, basically asks like 3 generic questions and then says he's done. Thankfully, Miss Jackson comes in with proper questions. Then he's kind of like, who knows, in another land during the interview. And then he just like says, oh, I grant. I mean, he's pretty useless, frankly. It's just, it's frustrating. I know he had that one call where he was the only one that denied, but he denied because he didn't have enough programs, not because he was a cockroach. But I don't really understand what happened either in this case. Now, there are 2 articles. Something that it seems really, and it's interesting. It's his mother who wasn't here at this hearing, who passed away from a broken heart, was quite a hero in this case. And it seems without her, he would have never been caught. And you could see, I don't know if you saw it, but it looked like he was staring daggers into the victim opposition when they spoke. He had a grin on his face too, I thought. But Mother Helps Crime. So it was originally written in 1992 and they updated it in 2019. So when Ella Louise Ford arrived at the scene of her son's murder, so she arrived at the scene of her son's murder. Her knees buckled briefly before she began flailing herself towards the bullet-pierced body. "No, not my son, no," she screamed, oblivious to the crowd, cops and flashing sirens all around her. But in this mist of grief, a different kind of instinct kicked in to the urge to find her son's killer, because apparently in this neighborhood at the time, it was just assumed that you wouldn't find the killer. I had a feeling inside of me that someone in the crowd knew who did it, and I knew I would find out. Her shaking body, restrained from family members, demanded to know if there was a suspect. An officer said no. Then without hesitation, she began yelling, "I know who did it. I know who did it." Actually, she had no idea who did it. Mark Copeland, 21, who shot her son, Mark Copeland, who was 21, but her unconsciously savvy bluff, along with some amateur detective work, helped spark one of the fastest murder arrests in months. About 24 hours after Copeland was killed, Juan Matthews, 21, was booked with his red room. My son was not going to be another unsolved John Doe. I was not going to stay in the background who lived in Copeland. The first clue came at the scene, as she loudly claimed to know the identity. So she said, "I know who it is," and she pointed to a house, to a man from the house. To a house near her son's body. And the man approached her and she said, "No, lady, you got it wrong, but I can tell you who did it," the man said. Recalling that moment, I looked into the man's eyes and he told me it's Beaver, which is his nickname. Then I'm just going to jump to this one because this is written November 8th, 1992 and rewritten June 15th, so it was a little bit more updated. So this upset her, and I do not blame her. That in the afternoon, one thing that angered Ella was what the minister told her that March afternoon as she looked at her son dying. So this is while she's there in the street, a minister said it was the Lord's will. And she didn't believe him. God does not take you with 13 bullets. And I think it was 19 bullets. 18. God would not do that. Another thing that angered her was that the police told her that they had no suspects and no motive. Nobody knew anything. They said, although a crowd had gathered, she was tired of hearing no suspects, no motive. She looked at Mark, who had been sitting under an oak tree, who was drinking and eating chips, and she vowed that she wouldn't rest until she found her son. She had gotten the name Beaver from a man in the crowd. When she called the New Orleans Police Department the next morning, she was told to call back with the information a week later. Yep, they said, call back a week later. We got 12 other murders to go first. But she was not in the mood to wait. She went back to the neighborhood with a pencil, a legal pad, and asked questions. And within hours, she knew where the suspect lived, had witnesses who said they would testify against him. She called the police again. "You got all the information you need," she told them. By 5 p.m., he was arrested. But it didn't end there. So when he was waiting for trial, the district attorney called one day and said the suspect was about to be released because no witnesses would come in to make a statement. Because that's all they had. And they needed the witnesses to come in. And she said, "Give me 15 minutes and I'll have the witnesses." When she found them, they said they were still willing to testify, but they hadn't been subpoenaed. The following Monday, They gave their statements, and he was indicted. The trial, October 2019, which lasted less than 7 hours, and her son was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. People tell her that she was brave to track down her son's killer and find the witnesses, but she doesn't see it that way. He was my only son, she said. I just did what I had to do. She was angry that the police seemed unable or unwilling to do their job to resolve it. I'm just angry I lost my son. She gave his bedroom set to his girlfriend. They had planned to get married as soon as he had graduated from Dillard. Likes to remember him cooking, taking everything he could find in the kitchen and making a big omelet and a big mess. He would kid because she was so protective. He used to say, "Mom, you act like I'm 5 years old," he used to say. "If you don't bother anybody, nobody will bother you." The only thing that consoles her is the belief that Mark is somewhere with her mama and daddy who died when he was 9. That's the one piece I get, she said. It brings me through the day. Again, she wasn't there because she had passed away, as I think her sister had said from her broken heart. Now, like Ms. Jackson said, he went to trial. It was a 7-hour short trial. And I guess what they had is they had witnesses who said that he was the one who did it. I don't know what other proof they had. And like Ms. Jackson said, she's missing records. We don't have the court records. But if he was in fact somehow innocent, he did nothing. No, he didn't say or do anything to. I don't think did he admit it? I couldn't even remember. I think he did admit it, right? He just said that it was. So no, he's just. They did. When they did go to his house, they found a 12-gauge shotgun, a 30-aught rifle, and a revolver, and the shotgun was reported stolen. It's this here. And they don't say here if they match, but they probably, I'm guessing they match the weapons to it. Although it might have been the, but he just had a horrible interview. If he had gone in there and had a different type of interview and had spoken differently, they probably would have commuted him. We've seen people who've done similar things and get commuted, but his attitude about it, he will never happen. And here we had 2 different commutation hearings. Miss Jackson dropping the mic twice. And if you didn't see it, you wouldn't believe it. But with that, I'll let you go.